Hi, I'm Gene Hammett. I'm the author of The Trap of Success and also the host of Leaders in the Trenches podcast. Today, this interview with Dove, you're going to talk about success, but some of the things that you may not know about success, how it holds you back and stops you from what you really want to do and create in your life. We talk about fear that gets in the way. We talk about courage and how you actually can call upon that. We talk about some of the things around leadership, because I study the fastest growing companies in America about what really makes them grow, and it's not a performance culture. You have to stay tuned to find out exactly what it is on this podcast.
Congratulations! You are tuned into Dove Barron's Leadership and Loyalty Show, the #1 podcast for Fortune 500 executives and those who are dedicated to creating a quantum leap in leadership. Your host, Dove Barron, is the founder of FullMontyLeadership.com. He's an executive mentor to leaders like you, a contributing writer for Entrepreneur Magazine, CEO World, and he's been featured on CNN, Fox, CBS, and many other notable sites. Dove Barron is an international business speaker who was named by Inc. magazine as one of the top 100 leadership speakers to hire. Now, over to Dove Barron.
Welcome, dear friends, fans, and fellow aficionados of leadership excellence. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Dove Barron's Leadership and Loyalty Tips for Executives, part of the Full Monty interview series. I'm your host, Dove Barron, founder of Full Monty Leadership, and I'm here to assist you tapping into your deep greatness so that you can reach that next level of clarity, focus, purpose, and profit in your business, your life, and your leadership impact. Today, we're going to be taking an insider look at the trap of success, how getting what you want might be the last thing you need. Remember, you can now chat about this episode or any of our past episodes inside of our Facebook community. Just go to Dove Barron's Leadership and Loyalty Podcast on Facebook. If you're a new listener, new viewer, thank you for joining us. Strap yourself in. We're about to go full Monty. Remember, you can find us on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, and all the places that you usually get your podcasts. We also need your help in staying relevant, so please get yourself over to iTunes, rate, review, and subscribe to the channel. You can also catch us on traditional radio stations across the United States every Monday and Thursday, all the way from Florida to Philadelphia. We're also, look for us on Roku TV, where there's over 100,000 subscribers. And if you're a regular listener, a big thank you to you for making us the #1 podcast globally for Fortune 500 listeners. With a potential reach of 2.5 to 4 million listeners for every show, we're honored and grateful to be cited by Inc.com as the #1 podcast to make you a better leader. You can also catch us on Google Home and Alexa by simply saying, play Dove Barron podcast. Again, thank you for sharing the show with everybody you know. All right, let's strip it down and dive right in. As a leader, whether you're a CEO, someone in the C-suite, a sales leader, an entrepreneur, a leader in any capacity, you know that success has a price. But the question is, how do we make sure the price isn't too high? So how can we overcome our fears, find significance, and attain profound success that we so desperately desire without getting crushed under the weight of it? Well, stay tuned, because our guest today is Gene Hammett. He has sold over $40 million in his journey of building multiple million-dollar businesses. Recently, Gene has published an amazing book about creating significance in your work while making an impact in the world. That book is titled The Trap of Success, which is, of course, available on Amazon. Gene is also the host of the outstanding leadership podcast called Leaders in the Trenches, recognized by Inc. and Entrepreneur Magazine as one of the top podcasts for leaders. I was also honored to be on that show and very grateful to do so. It was a fabulous show, and Gene is a great host. So, ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together and help me to welcome Gene Hammett. And the crowd goes wild, young man.
Thank you, Dove.
Good to have you on, mate. Very good to have you on.
Well, I'm excited to talk about all things leadership.
Cool. Well, your podcast is Leadership in the Trenches. I want to start there because if we go back into a bit of your backstory, you've really been in the trenches. What was the turning point in your leadership and your business philosophy that really had you in the trenches?
I lost everything. About 8.5 years ago, I had a business deal after being in business 9 years with my best friend. And that contract was never, legally was never performed on. So it was a battle to the courthouse and a legal battle, but I had 10,000 customers that were without the inventory for the Vancouver Olympics right there in your hometown.
Exactly.
And it was a horrible experience that ended up being something that turned around to be a blessing, not just a nightmare.
Yeah, well, I think inevitably those things tend to end up being blessings, provided you have the right mindset. However, I truly believe that the difference between a leader and non-leader is not all the statistical things that we'd like to think it is. Very often it is the ability to get knocked down and actually get up again from the canvas. And that, you and I had talked about this off recording about, I can't imagine how devastating that was, because it's one thing to lose a business you've had for 9 years. It's one thing to disappoint 10,000 clients. It's a whole other thing when it's your best friend that you were in business with. You don't figure you need a contract because we're best mates. Just talk to us a little bit about what that experience was like, because it's 3 levels of loss. It's like losing 3 closest people to you in one foul swoop.
I can make it even worse than that, Dov. And I still struggle with this today. Is my wife told me not to do the deal.
Oh. Meaning the final deal.
Well, just put the whole contract together. My wife said, "Don't do this deal." And I said, "I know, I trust myself. I trust my friend. I've got a gut feeling that this is going to work out just the way it needs to." And it didn't work out. So, you asked me to tell you how it was. It was horrific. I was on a 9-year tear of building a business up. We were doing 5-6 million a year, somewhere around there. And I had put it on easy street. I was very comfortable in what I was doing. I had some desire to do something bigger and better for the world, for myself, and make more money. But I was frankly very comfortable and trapped by that success, hence the title of the book. And the days of figuring it out and meeting with lawyers and meeting with, I had a legal team. I never had a reason to do a lawyer other than contracts, but I had a legal team, sit around with 4 or 5 of these people. So it was probably costing me $5,000 an hour or something to have a meeting. And I was just a shell of a person. My confidence level was below 0. I don't even remember some days. And that was the truth. There were weeks that went by where I was just wondering, how will I live? And that, my wife had said something, a few days after it happened, and it was beautiful. She goes, "We're going to look back at this as a blessing." And I do have to remind her of that now, because it's like, "You remember that time you said that and it was really smart and it helped me?" She's like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "Well, it was so true." But it still was a hard journey coming back. Like it wasn't like it just like, oh, it's cleaned up and everything worked out magically. No, it didn't. Nothing worked out on that.
Yeah,
I completely left the industry.
I think that people, say, "Oh, this will be a blessing." And I've often said, if somebody had said that to me on the day that I fell, I would have punched them in the nose.
Yeah.
Right? Because it may well be, but only retrospectively. At the time, it just feels like hell, just hell personified. There
was a lot of dark feelings, but there was a lot of just no feelings. There was a lot of numbness to the world. I remember going to see a movie with my wife, which is, something I never did in the middle of the day running my business. And we walked out of it going, what did we just see? And, there was just a lot of stuff that had to be dealt with. And it took me months and months to really get an understanding of what happened. I started putting my life back together after about 2 months. So that's
that's pretty quick.
Yeah.
That's actually pretty quick.
Well, there was a quote in, I don't remember exactly, but it was basically about, people won't remember what you did or what you said, but they'll remember how you made them feel.
Maya Angelou
says that. So I remembered that, and I said, I got coaching when I was growing my business, and some people don't like coaches, Dove. I totally get that, but I had learned to look to someone that had been there before me, had a different perspective. Maybe they hadn't done exactly what I was doing, because no one had coached me had built the kind of business I had been building. Right. But I needed that perspective. And the real reason behind it is I was having conversations where I felt understood, and I wanted to do that for others.
Yeah.
And
it's vital.
I remember, because every penny I had was stripped away from me, right? Even the money I had left wasn't really mine. And I remember going, what could I do in life where it can't be taken away? And I thought, I can pour into others. I can give to others what I have. And so I started down that journey right away based on that, just thinking that through. And a coach, many, many years ago helped me through. And I was like, yeah, that's what I want to do.
So let's go to it for a minute, because the book title is The Trap of Success, a brutally candid candid look at overcoming your fears, finding significance, and attaining profound success. So there's a lot to unpack in that second half.
Yeah.
Number one, brutally candid. Number two, overcoming fears, finding significance, separate thing, and attaining profound success. Very many people I know, because I've worked with them, attaining profound success. They haven't really overcome fears. They're still being crushed by fears on a daily basis. Most of them don't have any significance outside of their financial wealth. Talk to us about that first part of this, the brutally candid.
Okay, the brutally candid. I mean, I had the title of the book first, and I was working with that when I was writing it, but I did not have the subtitle. It was one of the last things that was written, because I wanted to nail it. And I did hundreds of these. I mean, you've been through this before, so you know what I'm talking about. And everyone's like, well, you just put some words together, but it wasn't that way. And when I saw the words brutally candid from something, I was like, oh, that's it. I had to go to my editor and I said, look, I know I put my heart and soul into this, but I want to make sure that it's brutally candid. I want someone to read it and think it's, not really paying off. And he's like, oh, you tell a lot of stories about high school, about, being the leader, being afraid of who you were and taking those chances. Like, you laid it all out there. This is brutally candid. So I think I nailed that part of it, because a lot of people have read it and it really has touched them emotionally, which is, it's not really an emotional book, right? But it is.
No.
I mean,
but it is, because of the stories. Yeah.
Yep. And it's a mixture of my stories. And I mean, I'm really, I could give you an example. Like, I went through high school not dating. I didn't really have the courage to ask people out. I would rather work, make some money, than put myself out there. So I avoided those big opportunities to proms and things like that, because I was just too scared.
Yeah.
And, life now is completely different. Just 2 days ago, I went to a 30-year class reunion. So I'm 48 years old. And it's good to see, 100, 150 people that I went to high school with, but they're like, you're a different person. I'm like, you're damn right I am.
I bloody hope so.
There's probably a lot of them that didn't change as much, which is not bad. I mean, but I live in the big city, which is only 30 minutes north of where they are, in Atlanta. But, I really felt like I should put my heart and soul into this and not hold back. I didn't want it to go, could I say that? There were a couple of spots in the book. I was like, should I put that in there?
Right.
Should I put in there that conversation I had with my wife went around this and the doubt I had myself? And I thought to myself every time, yeah, put it in there. We'll edit it out. And my editor said, no, this is gold. So
yeah, it's amazing. I mean, something you said a few minutes ago that I just think is important, and I know, because I was the same. I was extraordinarily shy in school and never asked anybody out and didn't have any of that, and like, come on, you, yeah. I'm extreme. My natural state is that of being shy. And there's a story I tell about visiting the UK after I'd been gone for, I think, 5 or 6 years. By then, I'd already lived in Canada, and I spent time in France and Italy and Asia, and I'd moved to Australia. And I was at a gas station and I saw this guy who looked sort of vaguely familiar. I went, is that? So I shouted over to this guy, I said, is your name Pierre? And he goes, yeah. And I go, oh yeah, I went to school with you. He's like, who are you? And he had no idea who I was. And he was, like I said, probably 26 years old, but he peaked at 18.
Yeah.
I mean, he peaked at 18 and it was clear visually and every other way in talking to him that he'd peaked. And I was kind of like this schlumper kid who, didn't really have it together and, was off in different worlds than everybody around me and was too shy to ask any girls out. But I think that I still think that in many ways was an advantage because it like you said, you were studying. I went, I'm never going to get by on my looks, so I better get by on something else. And there's got to be, and it was like that drive. And I think it maybe is part of, for you, there was another drive. It's because it's the nature of human beings to overcompensate for a weakness. So it's a very interesting thing.
Yeah, I can relate to that a lot, Duff.
I bet, yeah. Now, and it actually relates to where I want to go next because in the book, there's a chapter very early in the book about significance. And almost at the end of the book, there's another chapter about significance. And of course, It's in the subtitle. So this is a very important subject for me. I write a lot about it, speak a lot about it. But I think that many people don't understand what it means. So talk to us about significance and why it's in the subtitle, why it's an early chapter and it's a closing chapter.
So, in the journey of building a business, we get started to make money. Like we don't want to live by anyone else's rules. It's just the entrepreneur kind of thinking and we want to do something different and challenge that status quo, all those things. But, there is a sense of we've got to make money. We've got to be successful. And I think a lot of society looks at that. They focus on the success measures of life, whatever those are to you. And they say, when I get to that, I will create significance. So basically you defer the significance in your life so that you focus all your energy. That's the reason entrepreneurs work so much or anyone so pours into this. And they actually sometimes forget their family. That happened to me. I didn't forget them per se, but I did not operate from a place of treating them the way they should be treated and love them and spend time with them the way they should. I could give you many, many stories. Some of them are in the book. Some of them probably aren't. But we look at success and significance as first this, then that.
Right.
And I'm challenging that because it's so common for everyone. Like, well, when I get this, when I have enough money to give, I'll give.
Right.
When I have enough time, when I've created the freedom, that's when I'll actually create the charity or that's when I'll give back to the world. And I want you to think about it differently. What if they actually work together? What if they dance together? Success and significance feed off each other. The energy of each one of them actually builds you up, gives you more courage, gives you more energy, gives you more focus and clarity, and not delaying the fact that you could be giving to others. Because, what I define significance is it's about what you give away, where success is about what you get.
Let's have everybody soak that in for a moment, because I think it's important. I talk about that at a level of purpose as well. So one is about what you get, which is success, and it's the accolades, and it's the way the world recognizes you. You drive a Mercedes, you live in a big house, you bought whatever it is, you got a PhD. There's all these external validations that give you quote unquote success. But what you're talking about is that's cool if you want that, but the significance comes from what you give back. Yeah. When did that become so clear to you? Was that after your crash, or?
It was totally after. I mean, that was one of the big things that came after, and just going back to that moment where I told you I was making so much money and I was free, I was creating freedom and all of those things, but I really didn't feel complete. And losing it all, I said, I want to create something in my life that can never be taken away. And that's what you give to others. The confidence that you give to someone, whether it be an employee, whether it be a stranger, whether it be a partner, whether it be, a client, whoever it is, like no one can take that away. Now they can let it go. They can put it down and decide not to follow that path. But when you give someone confidence and courage and you lift them up, they don't want to go back.
No.
They've got a new standard. And so that really is something that happened for me after losing it all. And as I started the journey of becoming an advisor to other leaders and high growth companies, I had to realize those things. And it took a while. I didn't write this book right away. It's not a document of this fell apart. It's really a document of it fell apart, but here's how to rebuild your life.
Mm-hmm.
And rebuild it with a better foundation than just going after success, is to create that dance together.
But you said something. You said something there that's very important, though, Gene, and I want to address this because I think that there's going to be a lot of people watching, listening to us who are going to say, "Yeah, that makes sense. That's right. I get that," and then they're going to go back to work. Because they're going to go, yeah, it's a highfalutin idea. It's a nice idea that I'm going to be able to create significance in the world. I'm going to give some things away. I'm going to do something profound, whatever it is. But meanwhile, I got to pay the rent, and I got to prepare for what's coming down the pike. And this could happen and that could happen. And I need to make sure I got another $1 million in the bank. Make sure I got another $5 million in the bank, and another $1 million available, $5 million in assets, and then, I got to put the kids in college, and that I'll be happy when, I'll be successful when is a rotation. How do we get them to break out of it? How do we get them to go, hold on, whoa, hold the horses a minute. How do you get them to say it's about giving back first, or at least as you say, as the dance?
I think there's a lot of different perspectives on that. One of them is that we all know people who have probably more money than we do.
Mm-hmm.
And you can look at them, and if you really know them, not the Facebook Live that they live and the Instagram life that they put out there for everyone, but if you really knew someone, you know that they're not happy with themselves. They're not happy with the life they're living. They could have tons of money in the bank, but they're not treating people the way they should be treated, and they feel it. And if you can really relate to that, then you can go, is that the way I want to live my life? Is that the way I want to see everything? Or, and here's the big or, it's not you have to go create significance. I see the challenges. How do you get them to work together? So the real question would be, how could you have both? How do you have success and significance in the work you do? And how do you make that actually pay off so it's more profound than what you would have had if you only worked on success? And I can give you an example behind this. I've got a client of mine from years ago, like one of my first initial clients in this coaching journey I've been on. I never knew that he would have done this, but he has actually created kind of a foundation or kind of a charity within itself. He wanted to give back to charities. He's a web designer. And so he had a business doing web design, and I helped him build that business up. And that was great. But now he's at such a comfortable place, and he started this about 4 years ago to do 48 websites in 48 hours for nonprofits.
Wow.
And it was a big challenge. And what they do is they get a lot of volunteers come together. They get a lot of sponsors to help out. And they have the charities apply. And there's 48 charities in 1 weekend. They create their website. Everything, content, graphics, everything. And so they started that in Atlanta, and that was great. And they're like, oh, this went pretty smoothly. We could make it better. So they did it again in Atlanta. And I think the next year, the same year they did in Boston. Then they added on New York. Then they added on Minnesota. Then they finished up London. So the goal of that company is to create 48 nonprofits in 48 hours across the globe.
That's awesome.
And 48 cities.
That's pretty cool.
And what has happened to that is not only has he given back to the world, but his business has grown because he's getting, noticeable, from other people. Other charities are saying, hey, could you help us? And they're actually paying for it. They're not doing it for free. They're bigger charities. And he's building a really name for himself, a personal brand, if you will, because he's doing something that really is significant to the world. That's just one example.
That's a great example. Thank you. Well, one of the things you talk a lot about is growth culture, versus performance culture. Talk to us a little bit about that, so help our listeners and viewers get a better sense of that.
Our leaders and
with those things, right?
Leaders listening in here, you're probably very familiar with the core metrics of driving your business forward. So when I speak on stages, one of the things I'll ask, the audience is, what are the key numbers that drive your business? And they'll talk about sales. They'll talk about profitability. They'll talk about new acquisitions. They'll talk about new market growth, new products, whatever it may be. And then I'll ask them, what about your employees? What do they think about? What is important to them? And then we'll make a similar list of, they want to be promoted. They want confidence. They want new skills. They want flexibility. They want leadership training. They want new responsibility. And all of those things are very common, but if you had those side by side and you've got all these numbers driven on for the company wants, all what the employees want, you'll quickly realize they want something completely different.
Yes.
And leaders are real quick to ignore what the employee wants and focus on the performance-driven metrics of the company. And this happens not just in our companies that are, quarterly driven by numbers and whatnot. It's very prevalent there, but it's everywhere. They focus on, the key metrics, and we're taught to do that. I mean, I'm an engineer. I love numbers.
Sure.
But you've got to go beyond performance. And what I call that, and I can tell you where the research came from this, is creating a culture where you're putting employees first. And a lot of people argue with it, we got to put customers first. But I think leaders have to put employees first, and then so that the employees can put the customers first. Because if they feel taken care of, they feel understood, they feel like they're growing, they feel like they're getting new levels of ownership, if you will, they will show up every day loving the work they do just as much as you do as the leader. Yeah. You probably love Mondays, Dove, right?
I do. I love Monday.
It's one of my big things. I got these little stickers that I share around. I love Mondays.
I love Mondays. Very cool.
And I want to see a world where every employee goes, they start the week going, I get to do this. I don't have to go to work. I get to do this. And that is a growth culture where you're the leader that creates that.
Yeah, I love that. And as Richard Branson said, when you take care of your people, they will take care of your customers. That's why it's your people first every single time. And hey, what does he know about success?
Well,
not much.
Tony Hsieh would say the same thing. Zappos.
Exactly.
You can look at many leaders like that.
Exactly. When you look at those and what people don't understand is that those are the new world leaders. And we look at the old world leaders who were all about bottom line, and they're dinosaurs, dude. I mean, they're dinosaurs. Yeah. And not just to me, because I'm in the same age bracket as many of them, or the younger end of that age bracket, but they're certainly dinosaurs to millennials who, by the way, just so everybody understands, millennials are 38 years old in 2018. So millennials are not kids. The oldest ones are 38 years old. They're already in leadership positions. And if you're driving your business on these bottom line metrics and not giving a crap about your people, and you're wondering, well, why can't we keep people longer than a year? That's why. That is exactly why. So I love what you're saying there about creating some of this growth culture rather than just performance culture.
One of the things that I want to make sure it's clear to the audience here, and you're familiar with my work, but I studied the top 1% of fastest growing companies in the world. It's the Inc. 5000, if you want a specific list, but I have talked to over 300 of these leaders about why they grow their business. And I expected to find, because I'm just a student of business and growth, different marketing and sales strategies that would come together to create some pattern. But that's not what came out of my research. What came out of it was the importance of leadership and culture inside these businesses. And I began to codify that to be able to put together what I'm calling this growth culture, where people are, employees are put first, and then they're still customer centric. But it came from the fastest growing companies, that top 1%. And hopefully, even though your business may be at $1 billion, if you're listening in here, what could you learn from those companies about growth? Maybe you have a maverick team or an innovation team that needs to think in a different way. And the real core behind this, because I asked them this question, and it was just really telling to me, I said, how do you get your employees to take responsibility for the goals? And the answer came back of, it's not about responsibility. It's about ownership. How do we get them to feel like owners? And that is the core of my work. And that's what I'm trying to spread out through, speeches and podcasts and writing and whatever I do is all about how do you get people to feel like owners?
And I definitely think that that's vitally important. And at the same time, I'm always cautious. I like what Gary Vee said years ago. He said, marketers ruin everything. And invariably, we are all marketers. And the problem with that is that we say, well, we have to make our people feel like owners and operate like owners. And it becomes cliche. It becomes some shit that people say that's got no substance to it. So let's give it a bit of meat here, Gene.
Yeah.
There's leaders listening in and going, okay, yeah, I've heard that. I agree with that. But, Monday's going to come and the bottom line's got to be met and there's things to be done and there's stuff on the agenda, etc. Give us some way for our viewers, our listeners to grasp this, what the meat and veggies of what it means to get your people to start actually embracing their work as owners, not just as machines that are pumping out the widgets.
It's very common in leadership, and I've made this mistake too, and I try to watch myself every time I face these opportunities. When we have to cast a new vision, is to do that as a solo experience, and that's where we see things in the future. Same thing with mission. Like, what are we here? What wrong are we here to right? And wouldn't it be better if you actually have a team around you that they actually could participate in that, so that they could take what I'm calling ownership? Because if you participate in it, you have much more ownership.
Absolutely.
For years, all the dinosaurs were the ones who set the vision and expected communication, expected their charisma to pull everyone along. And that can work, and it had worked for a long time, but now it doesn't work as well because people want to be a part of it. They want their ideas heard. Another perspective behind this is, if you gave someone a task to do as a leader, that makes sense. You want them to do the work, but I think you don't want them to do the work. You want them to want to do the work. And one thing that you want to be able to do is be able to talk about, not just give them the step-by-step or tell them that here's the playbook. You want to give them the goal behind this and say, you go figure it out. You go figure out what the process is, because the person who comes up with the process is the one who owns it. They want it to be right. They want to fine tune it. They want it to be streamlined. They want it to be efficient. They want it to be resourceful. They want it to add value. But if you gave someone the step-by-step, they're just going to follow the task. We don't need people that can follow the task. We need people that can think for themselves. And that sparks that ownership. Does that make sense?
It does. It makes perfect sense. And I think that it's where, even if you're over 38 years old, even if you don't consider yourself a dinosaur, you probably were modeled leadership by dinosaurs. And that's the problem, is that we tend to do what we were taught. And so even if you're not a millennial, but you're not a baby boomer and you're in that Gen X bracket, which is where you fall, it's very easy to go, well, this is how my boss did it, so I just do it that way. And we're just gonna keep bumping into millennials who are going, nope, sorry, I will leave you. I will go somewhere else. And here's part of my research has shown that millennials will leave a higher paying job to go work somewhere else where their voice will be heard and their vision will be heard. And as you just said, where they feel like they're part of it, where they feel like, even if they don't have, quote, ownership, where they feel like an owner because I value your opinion. Like, that is every day that's going to win over money. And this is what people just don't get. Well, we'll throw another 10 grand a year on. You might as well wipe your bum with it, because it's not going to be any more useful.
Yeah, there's some people that can be bought, right?
To a point.
But if you expect that to always be the answer, it's going to be expensive. And it's not going to work always. So it's going to be even more expensive, because that turnover cost is a real cost. And helping people do it. I mean, I remember one company, and he said this when you were talking about Velocity Global, Ben Wright's the CEO. and he's the fourth fastest growing in this year's Inc. 5000. They grew at 39,000% across 3 years.
Is that all?
39,000%.
39,000%. Hello.
And everyone asks me, well, how big is this company now? It's 49 million or so. And I mean, it's bigger now, but when they, at the end of 2018 or 17. And so I asked him about, what really drives him. And he basically said, I want to give the people that work for me a professional environment to grow in that I didn't have throughout my journey. And this is a first-time entrepreneur.
Wow.
But the core of it is, how do I make sure I give them a professional environment to grow that they can feel like they're owners? And I love that story, and I share it with you guys because 39,000% is, you got to pay attention to that. Like, what is it?
That certainly grabs your attention. 39,000%. No, really?
Yeah.
So talking of that, why are you so driven in your work, in the work that you do?
Because this is my give back. Like, this is the chance for me to actually, create significance. And there's success in here. I'm building a business. I'm building something that, I get paid for what I do. My speeches, I get paid for working with clients, but I am sharing the insights behind this. And one of the things I think is different from, both of us, Brav, is we're not just people who do research. We're not people who just advise. We've actually done this. We've actually applied a lot of this stuff. And so having all three of those together is really helpful when you're actually working with people. And so I do it because it's a way for me to give back. I love what I do. We had the lottery down here the other day, and I pick on my wife sometimes, and we did play the lottery because it got up to over $1 billion. I don't know if did you see that a few weeks ago?
I did see that. Yeah.
And I think we put in $20 or something like that, and we didn't win, by the way.
Really?
It hasn't been claimed yet.
It hasn't?
Well, they got to get their financial house in order, I think, in order to claim the 1.8 billion or whatever it may be. But I told her, I said, what would you do if you won? And she goes, I'd be out, be on vacation, be on this. And I said, I'd still be working, right? And she goes, I know. I'd have a different schedule, but I'd still be working. If I was absolutely filthy rich, I'd still be working.
But it's interesting. Everybody I've ever met that is purpose driven has exactly the same answer. Like, because there's an old question that says, if it wasn't about the money, what would you do? And it implies that would you do it for free? And the answer is yes. But would you do it if you had a ton of money? Is another question, because people go, no. I would. I mean, my wife and I had that discussion 20 years ago. She said, if you won the lottery and you won like $100 million, what would you do next week? I said, next week I go on holiday. She goes, what about next month? I said, well, the holiday will last a month at least. And she goes, okay, then what? Then I just do what I do on a much bigger scale.
I'm with you.
I could finance the scaling much better. I could surround myself with the people who could help me with that scaling much better, but it would still be the same thing. It wouldn't change a damn thing. And my wife said, do you think you'd still work Sundays? I go, I might take Sunday off, but that would be it. On a regular basis. I do take Sundays off, but not very often.
Yeah.
On a regular basis. But it's the essence of what you're saying, is that desire to not just be successful, but to create the significance of creating a legacy, an impact that is greater than ourselves is so vital. And for me, it's the true sign of a leader.
That's it for me. And I think there'll be more businesses in my future, more different types of businesses, but I'm thrilled with what I'm able to give away.
Mm-hmm.
And I love to see growth. I love to see my clients explode. I think I have 7 clients on the Inc. 5000 right now. And it is, and they weren't there when we first started,
oh, really? That's cool.
Yeah.
that's very cool.
Yeah.
So, you obviously, Gene, you had a lot of success, then you had the crash, and you built a lot of success again, as you said just now, with the clients you're working with on a very high level there. But success, whatever that term means, it's a journey. So what was one thing that you did for a long time that actually blocked you from your success?
I mean, it's going to be let fear take over, which is the other thing we didn't talk about in the title, right? About the fears.
Right, exactly.
But, looking back before, we'll call it everything falling apart, the crash of my business, I wanted to innovate in my industry. I was in sports tours. And so I was at the Vancouver Olympics. It was one of the biggest. I've done 7 Olympics before that. And I wanted to streamline that. I wanted to create a new marketplace that would make that possible, to really lower the cost of aftermarket tickets and everything, and increase the safety of it. And I had all these great ideas, and I would talk about it, and I would sketch it out, and I would talk to my friends, and I talk. But I didn't take any action. I had the money to move forward with that. I had contacts. I had technical abilities because I used to work in project management within the internet technologies, and I could have done it, but I let fear stop me. And I let being too comfortable keep me in this like ever going loop and not really growing beyond it. So my big driver right now is, how am I going to grow today or this week? And how am I going to grow mentally and physically? And so I really think about the thing that stopped me was my fear. And the thing that keeps me going is the courage. I notice the fear every time. It's not that it's gone. It hasn't evaporated. Because as we go for bigger and better things, making more money, fear emerges. And I was talking to a client the other day about this. We do everything we can to fight for this level. And once we get there, it's great, but then it gets to be comfortable. And then when you think about getting to another level way up here, then you have to let go of everything that's over here, that all that core identity, to be able to move to this new place. And Absolutely. That's hard.
Absolutely.
And so that's what stopped me. And that's what keeps me going, ironically, is knowing that I'm growing and pushing beyond that and streamlining the work I do every day.
Yeah. One of the things I always say to my clients is, I want you to think about where you are today. And they go, okay. I said, now I want you to think about where you were 10 years ago. And they go, yeah. And I go, is where you are today your comfort zone? They go, yeah. I go, what was it 10 years ago? And they go, oh my God, that was my dream. I go, right. So you're in your dream. That's part of the reason you're clinging. But there's another dream waiting for you, and it's outside of this comfort zone. And it's like, that's what evolution as a leader is that we're always going for the next level. And it's not about the next level of a bigger house and more money in the bank. That's part of it, but those are just markers. It's about the difference and the impact and again, the legacy and the significance. So it's very powerful. Thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate it. As leaders, and as you know, Gene, on my show, one of the things that I'm very focused on and why I pre-interview everybody and make sure that somebody's going to be a right fit for the show is not just leadership, but I want to make sure that my leaders are conscious, that they're actually, to use a millennial term, woke. What I mean by that is that they are conscious leaders. They're committed to their growth. As successful as you are, where you are doing this great work with all these great people, what is the one thing that you're still working on in yourself? Because I think all of us who are great leaders are saying, you know what, I need to work better on this with myself. What is the thing you're working on in Gene?
Right now, it's literally, how do I stop doing all of the stuff that I've created in my life for distraction? The podcast, as much as I love doing it, it can be a distraction to creating some of the things I really want. And if my listeners are listening into this, I mean, I love doing the podcast, but sure. I also know that I'm here to do even bigger and better things. So the writing I do for Inc. magazine, streamlining that. And I'm not trying to create any new products or anything like that. I'm streamlining the ones I have. And everything is about focus, and everything's about clarity and getting even better clients inside of what I'm doing and clarifying exactly how they can grow and build the methodologies around that. That is my form of growth, is because I think it's very comfortable to learn. Very comfortable to pick up a new book and start underlining and start going, oh, I like that idea. I like that. What's really hard is to take really good opportunities and swallow your pride and go, you know what? It's a good opportunity, but I need great opportunities. I need something that really fires my soul. And I'm really working on that within myself so that I can continue to grow. And that takes even more courage than I've ever demonstrated before. And I'm up for this battle.
That's fabulous. That's awesome. In a world where we are often supposed to be terrified of our opinions, let me ask you, what's your bravest opinion?
Some people say this is, if I'm trying to make a world where people love Mondays. But I don't know what my bravest opinion is. I'm stumped by this. Aha!
I've stumped the podcast guy.
That's fine. Yeah. And I don't know if I've ever been stumped before, Dov. It's something that I'm doing every day. I will answer this way. I am losing everything gives you perspective, as always. And I think most of the people here have been through failure. But the journey back when everything has fallen is natural to us. It is what I would call, courage, that pivotal moment courage. When your back's up against the wall, like your wall behind you, you're going to fight your way out of it. I mean, I'm a trained fighter, and what I do, even in my part-time, my hobby is Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and I love that. But that pivotal moment courage is so important. But what's even more important is what I would call everyday courage. The everyday doing something outside that comfort zone. Every day looking at your to-do list and going, what is the hardest thing I need to do? What is the thing that you've put off? What is the thing that is pushed to the bottom? And a lot of people may say that you do only the most important things. But I think if you always skip that one thing, that tough conversation with an employee, as a leader, if you skip that conversation, hope it will get better, you're in trouble.
Yeah,
that's going to cost you a lot of money. All that little negative self-talk about skipping that. So I think every day you want to do something courageous so that you're strengthening that muscle, so that when something big comes along, you just look at it and go, oh, I guess that's today.
That's great. What is something that brings you joy?
I want to say my family and the work that I'm doing with, being a dad. I have an 11-year-old and working with my wife, and we're working on communicating even better. It's something I really enjoy, knowing that we're creating this. But I will also add it's the work I do, the results that my clients get, right? The actual, and it may be in hard, revenue dollar growth, but I have one of my clients right now where he talks about, I just want to be more confident. And that has grown in the last 8 months. That has just transformed who he is. And he's making more money because of it, but we're working on the core essence of who he is and the confidence, and everything centers around that. And it's some of the deepest work I've done when I'm able to work with someone, not just on a sales strategy or a positioning strategy. It's really getting into what's going on inside their head, what's going inside their heart.
Yeah. What's a guilty pleasure for Gene Hammett?
I will watch some TV. I go so hard during the day, come 6, 7 o'clock at night, when I put it all out on the field, I come back and I said, I just need to recharge.
Right.
So I will put on this. And I used to feel guilty about it, honestly. And I think I heard Tony Robbins say that he would watch The Family Guy to turn his brain off.
Sure.
And I'm like, I'm not going to watch The Family Guy, but I will indulge in whatever it is I want to watch, so that I can just turn off this machine, because sometimes I can't sleep.
So what is the guilty pleasure TV show?
My favorite right now is probably the Game of Thrones.
Oh yeah.
And then there's a very humorous one out. I was just talking about my wife earlier today. Mrs. Maisel's something.
Oh yeah, Mrs. Maisel.
Yeah, it's
the fabulous Mrs. Maisel.
Yeah, The Fabulous Mrs. Maisel, exactly. The first season, I've watched it 3 times.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, it's not about the actual storyline for me to turn it off. I mean, I like the humor in it, but I just need to turn my brain off. So I'll watch a show, reruns and whatnot. It doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. My wife and I, before we go to sleep, so we do, we have this process we do that. And then as we get in bed, we turn on the TV and we stream 20 minutes of Frasier, which we've seen the entire season several times.
Yeah.
But, it's like, because I don't have to think about it. It puts me into a laughing, creates a good chemistry in my coconut, in our brains. And then we go to sleep when that, as opposed to all the craziness in your head. So I totally get it.
It's the guilty pleasure. And I used to feel guilty about it. And now I've made peace with that.
Well, it's interesting because, it would be easy to go, oh, that's bad and bad use of time, blah, blah, blah. But I think that this is one of the things that most people don't get is that you will not function well if you don't learn how to turn your coconut off. And finding some way to do that, whether it's The Fabulous Mrs. Maisel or Frasier or whatever it might be, that's an important thing to do. And it makes you more productive.
I totally agree. And if anybody talked about it, not too long ago, Elon Musk was trying to get the production line up and everybody was kind of talking about like, dude, you can't keep, Richard Branson talked about it. Ariana Huffington is like, you got to take time to recharge. You got to trust in your team. You got, and this is a core problem with leadership. And, he wasn't doing that.
No.
And he was kind of coming off the rails. We could go through if anybody's here, they probably saw this and going, God, I'm glad I'm not making those decisions.
No, but you're right. Elon is kind of famous for that. The guy is clearly a genius, but, there are some sides to the leadership that certainly need some questioning because very often we see this, as you just said, where leaders are pushing people out of their business. They're pushing because they're not treating them like owners. They're not treating them like human beings. Somebody I know went and worked for Tesla and said, it doesn't matter that you have a family. It's assumed you will work Saturday. It's assumed that you'll be available whenever, particularly if you're in any kind of a leadership role. And it's like, that's not going to work. Not in the long term. It might work in the short term, but it won't work in the long term. So Gene, as we finish up here, let me ask you, I think this is really important. So, a lot of this stuff can come off as soft and ethereal and a good idea, but I want you to give us something really practical that our listeners, our viewers can put into action in the next 24 hours preferably, but certainly the next few working days and go, okay, I want to really use this and make it actionable. What's your practical advice?
On which aspect of what we talked about? Because we talked about growth and leadership and
anything that you feel is really important that you would like to make sure that they go away and do to remember Gene Hammett, to remember your message, to remember, to really get the importance of what it is that you've shared throughout the show. And I realize we have covered a lot of ground.
Yeah. One of the things that I'm getting a lot of feedback from is what I call a culture scorecard. And it's something, if you wanted to do this in the next, 24 hours, you could literally print this out and go through 9 different objectives of your culture. And it gives you a chance to take something that's a little squishy, a little bit intangible, and put some actual metrics to it. And it really is about creating that growth culture that I mentioned earlier, where I think that if you were really honest and brutally truthful with yourself, or brutally candid, if you will, you would notice where you want to focus your attention so that you could actually be the leader you wanted to be. And so you can download that, on my website. It's genehammett.com/culture. And I think it's what I would call a coffee shop exercise. You could have a good cup of coffee and really think about where you are and really just zero in on 1 or 2 areas that you want to move forward with your leadership and your culture to what I would call, it can be a competitive advantage. Mm-hmm. And that's that's what I would suggest.
That's fabulous. Thank you. So again, please tell our viewers, our listeners, where they can find out more about you and about all the wonderful resources that you offer.
Well, I've moved everything into one domain. So genehammett.com. So it's GeneHammett. And you can find the podcast, Leaders in the Trenches. You can find the book. You can find everything on the social channels under Gene Hammett. So that's, I'm not hiding anywhere.
Thank you, Gene. It's been a pleasure having you on the show. We've loved what you've shared. Thank you so much. I hope you'll stay with us to the end. And for you, dear listener, remember that, this is worth nothing if you don't do anything with it. So please take action. Remember, information is worth the whole of the donut. Transformation takes place when you have application. So I implore you to listen back, take some notes, think about what you can do with this, because Gene has shared some real gems here, and I really hope that you'll take it and put it into action. And remember, you can chat about this show or any of the past episodes of our show inside of our Facebook community by going to the Dov Baron Leadership and Loyalty Podcast inside Facebook. And the research consistently shows that one of the biggest challenges facing the most successful companies is somewhat counterintuitive, in that these fast-growing companies often hit a point where they realize they're spending a fortune attracting, training, and developing talent, only have them leave at an alarming rate. If you're sick of investing in your talent, only have them leave before you get your ROI, then come talk to us at fullmontyleadership.com, where we provide you with the essential leadership skills to rekindle and amplify the hidden loyalty assets inside your organization by tapping into purpose. fullmontyleadership.com, providing you with the concrete soft skills to take you and your organization to the top and keep you there. Why? Well, because you can't outsource authenticity. Also, remember to stop by the Matrix, matrix.fullmontyleadership.com. You don't need the www, just matrix like the movie, .fullmontyleadership.com, and get your authentic leadership matrix self-assessment tool, where you can assess your leadership in the 5 main areas of leadership that's valued at $197. You get it absolutely free for being a regular listener. Remember, you can play us on Google Play and Google Home, and Alexa, just simply say, play Dov Baron Podcast. Thank you for sharing the show with everyone you know. Till next time, this is Dov Baron saying, stay curious, my friend. Stay curious about where your growth is inhibited by your fear, and how you could shift that by focusing on the significant impact you can have, not just your success. Till next time, I'm Dov Baron. I'm here to assist you tapping into your deep greatness to reach the next level of clarity, focus, purpose, and profit in your business, your life, and your leadership. And I am out.